Hello, welcome, and this is why we don't do things live very often. I'm Jen Birch, and I'd like to welcome you to our first Bitesize Learning event of the year. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm farming just east of Curry with my husband and my in-laws. And I'm also the chair of the Women's Committee this year, which is a little bit ominous since our main event's been cancelled, but we're pretty excited to get these bite-sized learning events happening to keep everyone involved with our little community. So for those people who haven't been to a bite-sized event before, it's just an interactive workshop on a whole range of topics that are of interest to the Liebe women. So if you have any suggestions for topics or information that you'd be interested in, please get in contact with Danielle and we can look into our future events. So I've got here with me today Merrie and Tracy, who are going to have a chat about farm meetings. You ladies would just like to introduce yourselves for the people who don't know you. Merrie? Okay,
thanks, Jen. I'm Merrie Carlshausen. I've been farming for the last 40 years, and I've got a background in counselling and financial counselling, and I've been working with farm businesses, mediating businesses, mediating families for the last 30 years. So yeah, that's briefly who I am.
Yeah. Tracy?
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, Tracy McAlpine. I'm farming with my husband Brian, actually next door to Jen, and been farming for nearly 30 years in partnership. Very actively involved in our business, doing probably what most of you do or will start doing the accounts, finances, budgeting, marketing, HR, safety, etc., etc. So, and yeah, started meetings some years ago. Thank you.
Thanks. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you look on your screen up on the top right, there's a few little icons. We've got the chat one. So please ask any questions along the way. If you want to verbally talk, if it's a bit more complicated, just write on there, "Can I talk?" and we'll activate your microphone for you. We can either have questions throughout or at the end. There's also a little handouts icon where we've loaded all the reference material that Merrie will be referring to, so you can download that and print it and save it. And before we get started, we've just got a poll as well, just to see where everyone's at in the farm meetings section. So if you can answer those questions quickly, please, now. All right, so we've got 20% of people don't hold farm meetings and 80% do hold farm meetings, but not consistently. So I'll hand over to you, Merrie, to get started with some information on how we can get those people more consistent.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So I have my background in family mediation and business mediation gives me a sense of a real need to set the scene of businesses and how meetings can be safely run in businesses, because I can see where it goes wrong. I'm sure it goes right very often, but I'm always bought in. I'm bought into businesses where there are already existing problems. So what I encourage people to do is have a bit of knowledge and a bit of thought around how they actually approach these things, and then you're most likely to succeed in what you're trying to achieve in running your business meetings. Excuse me for actually reading some of this because I don't want to leave out some particular aspects. So I'll use my notes quite a bit. So in setting the scene for business meetings and meeting types, have I got the slide up? I'll get started, and so the first slide is that all businesses are different. There are no two businesses that are the same, so we can't presume there is a generic fit for how farm businesses look or how they function. Do we have the first slide up? Yeah, great. You'll notice with some of these slides, I've got documents attached to them. When I bring up the slide, there will be a document shows up and you're able to save those documents because they're relevant to these particular slides. So no business is the same. So I want you to think about the makeup of the farm business in terms of the generational difference. Sometimes you have multi-generations. I've been into farm businesses where there's 3 generations involved at decision-making levels, and some are just single couples in one generation. The numbers involved, the gender mix, the marriage and marital status, or the family mixes, the personality differences within businesses, the enterprise mixes. Some businesses are mixed farming, some are pure cropping, some are pure sheep, some are horticulture. Geographical location makes a difference to a farm and how they actually function. Soil types, rainfall zones, the history of being involved in farming, that makes a difference to people's risk profile and their expectations. The education of people. So within a business, a business can look very different. So there's no generic fit for any of these businesses. So we're looking at immense diversity within farm businesses. The next slide is there's many different types of meetings. So a farm business could be having what I call operational style meetings. These are working in the business. They're the toolbox meetings, the shed meetings, paddock meetings, people call them different things, or Monday morning meetings. But they're regular, they're short, sharp, they involve the people who are involved at an operational level. Then you have family meetings, which is the discussions around how a family's going. In fact, our family started meetings through having family meetings when our eldest was 11 years old. Then there's the business management meetings. So these will involve planning. So they can be strategic, they can be agronomic, they can be around the finances and accounting, they can be around succession. And these meetings are working on the business. So one is working in the business and getting stuff done. The other is working on the business, which is looking at those bigger picture things that become the incredibly important parts of farm businesses. And this is where I see success or not in a business. Am I on slide 4? Yeah, excellent. Each meeting has differing requirements, so the frequency, duration, who needs to be involved, the complexity and discussions and content. Hence, the level of sophistication will differ between the types of meetings. So for the operational meetings, they'll be much more simplified. For the business meetings, there needs to be other things considered. However, there are some standard things that bring success to all meetings. And this is that any meeting needs to have a purpose. A meeting can only be necessary and useful if there's a clear reason for having it. Secondly, they need to have a plan. So there needs to be structure, expectations, and format and leadership within the actual running of the meeting. So that can look very different, but you need to have a plan. You need to have the right people attending the meeting. So for operational meetings, you have your workforce and your people making the decisions around those operational things. For a business meeting, you might be bringing in extra people to assist. So, for instance, you might have a finance meeting where you're having your accountant there, or a farm consultant, or other support people. You need to have the right access to tools in meetings. So for them to be efficient and effective, you really need to have quick access to tools that you can use. So it might simply be butcher's paper or calculators or computers and document information. So you need that sort of information there with you. And then conclusive clarification around a meeting. You need to be able to concisely tell people what's gone on in the meeting and where are we going from here. So you need 5 things. You need to have a purpose, a plan, the right people attending, the right tools and appropriate tools for the type of meeting you're running, and then conclusive clarification. So if we're having these meetings, we're going to end up with benefits from them. And the benefits of effective meetings to a team are they increase the team understanding of what and how things are achieved. They build trust, respect and knowledge, and this makes for more effective decision making within a team. When you have high levels of trust and respect, you make much better decisions. A collaboratively working team builds individual strengths and weaknesses, making each person more competent for their business. So you see people becoming competent as team members. Building effective relationships stops damaging conflict, and I've seen plenty of conflict come out of meetings. So when you stop that conflict, you're able to get efficiencies and productivity escalating. A collaborative team working creatively will often identify opportunities that no one else could have thought of on their own and solve problems consistently well. A team with a high capacity to develop and implement effective meetings and goal setting will have much greater likelihood of achieving their goals, whether they're strategic, business, family, succession, or whatever. So there's lots of benefits to a team, but there's even more benefits to a business. So ultimately, a business will benefit with increased efficiencies, increased production and productivity, increased innovation, and increased enjoyment in the business. So if you're new to having meetings, my suggestion is to start with operational style meetings. Operational style meetings. So start with toolbox meetings, Monday morning meetings, those meetings that are very task focused, regular, short, structured and organisational. Farmers love, they feel great after a short and effective meeting that they can go off and do things and have a clear mind around those things. So if they've got a list of stuff they can go out and do, they feel much better about themselves. Then they look at those meetings and think, wow, they're actually working. We're getting something out of this. The type of structure that's involved with the type of structure and rules involved with a toolbox meeting will be more directive and much more simple. All operational workers will attend. Everyone is there, ready at 7 o'clock in the morning, with a coffee in their hand, and will be finished within 35 minutes. They have a visual plan available. They report back the following week on previously delegated tasks that may need to be continued, or they may need to be deleted or changed or reminded of. There'll be plans for the week discussed, task delegated, feedback given, discussions had, questions, and then they'll go off and do their meeting. So it's a very slick, easy way of getting people out there in the field doing what they've got to do. Business meetings, which are at a higher level, where business discussion takes place, requires a collaborative approach and a level of human resource sophistication. So this means greater protective mechanisms need to be in place to enable everyone to be fully engaged. This means professional management discussions can take place effectively without people bringing their own agendas and stresses into the discussions and decision making. In this case, it's important to have rules of engagement that are agreed on and value drivers that need an open and honest discussion. Once there are these two things in place, there'll be a commitment by all the participants to be engaged in the meetings and the discussion within the meeting. This level of meeting requires high levels of team trust, planning, effective chairing, shared and diverse knowledge, problem solving, research tools, decision making, accurate minutes and reporting mechanisms. The sophistication grows quickly when the foundational elements are established and adhered to. And where I often see the problems is where those foundational things haven't been put in place. This is why I suggest spending time practicing in the operational meetings first, and then building on to these, and seeing the success of those, and then building on to the business meetings. So I hope that's made some sense to
It does.
everyone.
I guess one of the questions that leaps to my mind is the operational meeting. You want it to be slick, on the ball. Would like to get out and work, but they also like to have a chat. And that Monday morning meeting can end up taking about 3 hours. How can we help keep things on track and make sure we're not losing half a day in this discussion?
So sometimes you'll find some of those, it might be just chit chat, and that's about bringing it back into and saying, you know, do this before or do it after the meeting. Or it might be invoking those discussions around business things, which often it does, which is when you can suggest maybe we need to have a dedicated discussion around this in a business meeting. Let's plan something for next Thursday, or let's see if the business is available next Thursday to be able to have these discussions, because it sounds like it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whose role would it be to keep everything on track?
In the operational meetings,
Yeah.
the chair.
Okay.
So the person in charge.
Yep.
Same with the business meetings. I often say to people, rotate those positions of being the chair.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone gets the skills and that leadership. But it's their role to understand how to rein in some of the conversation if it's going off track, or coming to some sort of conclusion with discussions.
I guess, Jen, from our experience, our operational meetings, which will involve usually Brian and myself and our employees and any casual staff, is they're typically less formal, and we don't minute the meetings as such, and we typically don't have an agenda. We really talk about the week ahead, and I guess the minutes become the job list for the week. So that job list will then be distributed to everyone. Once upon a time it used to be on a bit of paper, now it's usually on an email, so everyone's got it and it's prioritised. And then the following week, when you have your meeting, you're then able to actually tick off what did you achieve. So in terms of, I get it as often we'll have a Monday morning and there'll be morning tea and we'll go, oh, half an hour's turned into an hour and a quarter. So it is, I think we're all aware of that. And yeah, I don't know how, especially when the footy's on, I don't know how you bring it in, but yeah, often you've just got to go, someone's got to get up and go, okay, we've got to go and get the work done. So yeah, that can be difficult. But sometimes I think we need to recognise if they've, you know, we might have had a meeting for 10 days because of circumstances. Maybe that chat is really good. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like, and again, that comes back to who's actually in those meetings. So if you've got your workforce in the meetings, then of course you're wanting to get them out there doing operational stuff.
Yep.
But if it's a much more intimate, so a couple of business members in that meeting, then you know it's a good opportunity to have a discussion.
And I guess with a lot of people saying they hold meetings and not consistently, the Monday morning meeting, what do you do if you miss it for a few weeks? So if you're away, Monday's public holiday, seeding, harvest, do you keep having meetings during that time? How do you get back on track if you've missed it a bit?
Yeah, our business doesn't have operational meetings during seeding and harvest, but they will have those discussions at different times throughout the seeding and harvest. But generally, when things become a habit and you start seeing the benefits of those habits when they're regular. And sometimes I've seen in businesses where they've had those operational meetings and they've become so, because the meetings are so good, their communication has really improved. And so they're capable of having those meetings out in the paddock, where in the past it used to turn into conflict. It now is a very productive way of exchanging information and delegating tasks and stuff, and they do it in an informal way.
Yeah.
So it's horses for courses, and how the business will evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're like, we don't have the Monday morning meetings during seeding and harvest. We will try and have, we don't do it probably as often as we would like to, but when there's a shift change, is have a meeting out in the paddock, you know, with the guys. And that might only be 10 minutes, might be a discussion on, you know, any issues, you know, we'll have a chat about safety, you know, and address anything that is brought up at those meetings. So I think that's probably important to try and do when all of your team members are together, or the majority of your team members are together. I'll just go on to business meetings. For us personally, during seeding and harvest, we will still try and have business meetings in that time, because it's really important. So for us, it's a meeting a month, and we have to do it during seeding and harvest as well. So that's crucially important, because there's lots of decisions being made at that time.
Yeah. So that sort of brought in a question that we've got here. Would it be beneficial to have a pre-seeding, pre-harvest, longer operational meeting, or would that be classed as a business strategic meeting? And what sort of people would you have in that planning meeting?
So I think if we go back to the very start of having meetings, and if I look at our business, is when we were first married and in partnership, we were always having meetings before we met the accountant, before we met the bank manager, usually the night before, in a rush, rustling everything together and go, what do we need to talk about, blah, 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 do everything. And so I think all businesses are having meetings all of the time. It's about how formal you start to make those. So back in 2005, when I did the Rabobank EDP program, that was really when we started to have more formal meetings and try and do them regularly. So they might have actually been, as a start, you start with your operational meetings, but then your business meetings you might do we start at the beginning of the year. You do your review and your budget, so that's a meeting time. Then your harvest, you do your seeding, you do a meeting, and you'll have a business meeting, but you'll also have an operational meeting. So that's probably a really good place to start with both, and then do the same leading into harvest. So probably really important to do that, I think.
I guess is that where you can quantify some of the benefits of these meetings as well?
Oh,
it's a bit difficult to see the benefits sometimes.
Yeah, look, I think it is difficult to quantify the benefits, but if you have an operational meeting before seeding, is usually with all team members involved, is usually what that will result in. There'll be certain parts that will need to be ordered. There'll be things that need to be done. So you should be fully ready for seeding. So basically, if parts are ordered, it means when there's an issue, it's in the shed. It doesn't mean driving to the town. It means a service truck is stocked with everything that might be needed at the paddock. So that really increases your efficiency and enjoyment, I guess, as well.
You see big differences in how the harmony of the business goes when there's been everyone's been heard, everyone's had opinions and ideas, and it's been sorted through, and you're able to get on and just do things. Things run much more cooperatively and smoothly, so you see greater efficiencies. And,
I guess you really can't overstate the importance of setting those values and ground rules. And it can sort of come into the whole communication platform with the workforce.
Oh, absolutely. Well, every relationship, whether it be business or personal, is based on communication, so which is essentially what a meeting is. So if you're communicating, if you're having meetings, things will flow a lot better. There'll be less stress, more enjoyment.
And any relationships that we have underpinning value drivers that drive that relationship. So if you think of a collective of people in a business, everyone is bringing in potentially different value drivers. So as a business, we need to be able to consolidate those and find out what the common value drivers. For instance, are we going to be a collaborative team, or are we going to be a hierarchical team? Are we going to be a cooperative team, or are we going to have dissonance within that team? So you start talking through these things, and very often most businesses that I've worked with will come up with very similar value drivers to other businesses, because we basically, as human beings and as effective businesses, we all want the same things. But it's about overtly having those conversations to ensure that we're all honouring them rather than bringing our own agendas into them. So I hope that makes sense.
How important is it to review the values? I mean, people change, you've got new generations coming in, the older generations are moving out, people's importance and their own, I guess, drivers of what they want out of the business might be changing.
Yeah. I find those value drivers don't change. they don't change once you've had the discussions and you've all agreed on them.
Okay.
They very seldomly shift. The most difficult conversations are when you're having those, when you're recognising the dissonance between the values, when you're having the discussions initially. And then it starts making people go, oh yeah, actually, we do want a younger generation engaged and offering their capacity and putting their input and their enthusiasm into this business. So that's how it changes the value drivers, and it's at the very initial stage of those discussions. It's very seldomly throughout the business evolution that those value drivers will change, because the hard discussion's been had at the beginning. And the same with the rules of engagement in those meetings. I mean, this is another level of it, but those rules of engagement, if we're saying actually within our meetings we want to show that there is value and respect for each other, then that will vary. If that's what's the word? If we've stepped over the line with those, it's very quickly obvious to everyone that that's what's happened, and we'll be pulling each other in. Yeah. So that's what keeps the business, the meeting safe, because you've got these sets of rules and sets of values that actually give guidance to them. And then they become unconscious. They just become part of the system.
Yeah. Does it change at all between the operational and the family meetings? The operational might be a lot more hierarchical, whereas the business ones might be a lot more collaborative.
Yeah.
But would you say the values would be the same or similar, even though it's a different structure of how the meetings run? Like one, you have the same chair, the same secretary, the same final decision maker, whereas the other ones, the skills are shared a bit more.
Yes, there's much more structure in the operational meetings out of necessity, because usually something that's being run quickly and efficiently needs to keep people on task. So that will look very different. In the business meetings, if we're deciding to be a collaborative business, then to actually show that respect and regard for different opinions and ideas, then you want to have the time. That's why those business meetings are mostly 2 to 2.5 hours.
So I'll just add in on that, in terms of operational and business meetings, our operational probably have less structure in the sense that we don't generally have an agenda and not minuted as such. Whereas our business meetings have a structure, so they have a set agenda. You know, we ideally, you know, we have our business meetings once a month, usually on the second, has to be in the second week of the month, and we will usually I'm meant to send an invite to Brian to see if he can have the meeting on a certain day at a certain time. If we both can't do it then, it has to be done in that week. That is a priority. So whether it's over morning tea with a cuppa and a cake, or if it has to be at 6 o'clock at night with a beer and a wine, then that's when we do it, and they're usually 2 hours. And yeah, but they're very structured with, you know, the previous minutes, it's got the action plan, it's got items for discussion and decisions, very structured. So that's the way ours operate. But, you know, when we first started having meetings, we had one meeting for everything. So that was, actually wasn't really family when the kids were in primary school and we started having family meetings. But in terms of the business, we had personal, we had HR, we had safety, everything was in the one. Whereas now we have a business meeting, we have a safety meeting, we have an operational meeting, we have personal meeting. They're all separate. We're meeting out. Yeah, but they are really good.
Yeah.
think just a comment on structure. Every meeting needs structure, but it's what that structure looks like.
Yeah.
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 So for business meetings, it is about minutes. With an operational meeting, it is about it being slick and someone having the structure in place. So,
Yeah.
okay, we're talking about this, then we're talking about this, and then everyone's getting their act together and everyone leads. You know, so that's the structure. So when I said in slide 5, the features of any meeting, you need to be able to think about those, what do we need of that in this particular meeting. So that's a bit of a recipe of, you know, tailoring the right sort of format for a meeting, any meeting. Yeah.
So how long do you recommend between introducing the operational meeting before you start bringing in more and more meetings?
In my experience, it's been people start seeing the benefits of the operational meeting, and it inevitably evolves into creating a more structured business conversation. And that's when we say, let's actually sit down, make some time to sit down and discuss these things, because they are important to us, and we'll be missing things off the radar if we don't actually, you know, collectively discuss this and make a decision about it.
Yeah. We've got another question come in. How do you go from hierarchical in operations meeting to a collaborative meeting in business successfully? My thinking is there has already been a tone set in the day-to-day operations of hierarchy.
Yeah, depends who is involved in those operational meetings. If there's other members of the business involved in those operational meetings, it might mean a discussion around the business having conversations around other things, in which when you discuss your value drivers and you're saying, well, let's value and respect each other, let's value differing opinions and ideas, because that adds to the creative thinking of the business. So when we're starting to draw in those value drivers and you have discussions around them, that should take away some of the hierarchical thinking within the business. So is it okay for us to not have a boss in the business? Are we willing to not have a boss? Are we willing to say someone will be ultimately making calls on things, you know, ticking off the box or ringing the bank or whatever, but it may be that it could be any one of the 6 people involved in the business, because you get to that stage where you've got the capacity and the knowledge to be able to trust that the business is just getting it done, and it doesn't matter who's through.
I guess it comes down to wearing different hats as well within the business. In the business meetings, you might have, like, Brian's the operations manager and you're the admin HR office manager, but then you go out into the field. If you're filling in as truck driver, then you become one of the work team and you sort of just get told what to do. So you've got different hats in different meetings.
Yes.
Which can be really complicated to remember.
Well, in my experience, people just fall into those positions when there's lack of competitiveness. So the difference between a collaborative team and a competitive team is that the competition will play out in the field. It'll play out in the business, whereas the collaboration will play out in the field and it will play out in the business. So it takes away that need to, you just accept that a person is more experienced in that particular area, and I'll just take take my direction from that person because I trust their judgment around this.
Yeah, it's difficult. Our business being quite small, being only Brian and myself, and then obviously our 3 children. Operational, we have the employees, but I might use an example when we have a family meeting. So with the 5 of us, the original intent was to rotate the chair, but Brian typically will chair that meeting. Although what now happens is there's parts of that meeting that he will just naturally do. There's parts of that meeting that I will naturally do because it's more part of the work that I'm doing, and we do just naturally, like you say, Merrie, that just flows to the person. So look, it's always going to be hard in family business. Sometimes for some people to let go, people wanting to control, but I think if we can really look to believing that everyone's there for the right reasons and that accept that, well, if someone's taking control of that, that's actually really good for us. That leaves us the time to, and energies to put into something else. So let's do what we do really well, and the best, the best people, or the people that make the most money, you get other people to do the work for you, don't you? So it's not about, you can't do it all yourself. So just accept that you need others to help you. And if they're prepared to take that load, that load. Yeah. I don't know if, it's not easy, but
Yeah. Another question's come in. What is the best way to get the whole family on board to try out these meetings when these sort of discussions have been very occasional in the past?
Start. Just say we're going to have a meeting, but actually maybe is formally send out an invite, date and a time, and send out a simple agenda, and actually send that out a minimum of 2 days beforehand, and ask for people if there's anything that they want to discuss, actually add it on to that. And we did start our meetings early. I think Hayley was probably 8 or 9 years of age when we had our first meeting, family meeting, which didn't discuss finances or anything. But I remember her saying to Brian, the trampoline needs fixing. So that actually really formalised that process. So you've just got to start, but just try and formalise it initially. And that meeting might only go for an hour, and it might be a bit higgledy-piggledy. Document it, do some minutes, send them out, and then just let it roll.
I'm thinking if there's more people involved than in your situation, then I've struck levels of intransigence around having meetings. And I remember in one meeting, everyone was in agreement except for the boss. And in that case, they actually said to each other, we will still have a meeting and we will let Dad know that we're having this meeting and that we'll be discussing things that he may love to have input into and may affect him. And that got the dad involved in that meeting, and it was a mediated meeting, so someone was there facilitating and keeping it safe and going through the steps, and it just became like magic. That person could see that no one was ganging up and no one was setting their own agendas. All they wanted to do was see where their futures were tracking to, and that they had some input into that. So, I'd say if there's reluctance to having meetings, you need to have some discussions within the family and say, let's bring some of the things to the everyone's attention that we would like to be able to discuss, and put them in non-threatening ways that actually explain we all want to see the success of this business and we all want to see the futures, everyone's future looked after. and we want everyone engaged in it. I think if it's put in a way like that, we get more engagement, or more, whatever that word is, of people getting into the meeting and having a place at the table.
We touched on, I think I remember talking to Brian actually about one of the importance of our meetings was if the older generation who are running it currently die suddenly, they do a lot of travel, the plane goes down.
Yep.
How can we take over if we don't have things documented, if we don't have meetings and processes in place? And I remember Brian said the same thing.
Yep.
And the importance of having meetings and having minutes and having everyone in the conversation all the time.
Absolutely.
You're safeguarding the business from unfortunate events. Even if someone gets sick and they're in hospital, they can't run the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes a lot of risk out of the business.
Yeah.
This sort of behaviour.
Yeah. And really important, particularly in intergenerational businesses, to understand everyone's goals. So, you know, the new family, you know, Jen's situation is different to her in-laws, you know, so you've all got different goals at different stages in your life. So it's about working together so that you can all achieve those goals. So it's
you all have personal goals,
Yep.
but collectively you have some very common goals that will lead to those personal goals.
Well, your business goals, you need personal goals, your business goals help you get to those personal goals, don't they?
Exactly.
So you know, and that's where you probably bring in strategy meetings. So you should be having strategic meetings as well. So, you know, you start one meeting and then you end up having to have more and more meetings. So for different reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't actually see that a lot in where there's a lot of different meetings. I see business meetings are business with different things on the agendas.
Yep.
And they have those meetings. Those agenda items discussed in probably 6 or 8 meetings a year.
Yeah.
And the rest are about operational conversations or business conversations that might happen sort of ad hoc to those things.
Yeah.
But one of the things about business meetings is that they need everyone to build their capacity, so no one person is chairing the meeting. There needs, to make it inclusive, the agenda there needs to be an agenda established by everyone so that everyone has the opportunity to have input into that agenda. It's very easy in groups of people to create exclusion. And what we're wanting in collaborative businesses, really effective business, groups of people, is collaboration rather than exclusion. So if you can think of in terms of that, how do we engage everyone more than disengage? Then we'll find the answers to do that.
You touched earlier on some of the difficult cases and starting the difficult meetings with being facilitated. Do you have any advice or information on where people can go to get that sort of help if they're struggling with it?
Some business for myself. I go in and mediate and build the structure for businesses, and generally there for a couple of those businesses. Some businesses still want me to be in their businesses, and that's the personality types that's involved in those businesses. Some people use farm consultants or their accountants. I'm not convinced necessarily that they are across the differing personalities and the dynamics that go on within these business meetings, and generally there's, in the background of these people, there is someone that they are answerable to, and they generally will often unconsciously side with that position, and I don't necessarily think that's a healthy thing. Yeah, so yeah, I do this sort of work with farming businesses. I love it, and I do a lot of it out of farming businesses too, with family mediation and things.
Yeah.
So, I enjoy that.
So you can do it right from the basic, helping people set up operational meetings and getting that.
Yeah, setting the rules of engagement and the value drivers, having those difficult conversations are easier with a facilitator. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, there's probably other people out there who can do that. Yeah. HR people, I guess.
Yeah. So you're happy if people want to get in contact with you from this?
Yeah.
Have we given various contact details? Yeah. Or we can just pass them.
Yeah. Actually, you'll find my mobile number on the bottom of any of the documents attached, because those are my documents. So I've created those over the last 20 or 30 years.
There you go. So if anyone does want to get in contact with Merrie for more information, even if it's just a further chat about how to get going or any issues that you're having.
Yeah, and very happy to have a chat with you, you know, if you just want to pick my brains over this too.
So I think we're nearly ready to wrap up. If you could help us out and post on the chat if you've got any further information in this field, if you'd like us to run another webinar or another Bitesize Learning event, where you'd like to go from here. Video focus, it's a pretty broad field if you want to focus more on like difficult conversations or family meetings, operational meetings, anything like that. Let us know and we can look at that.
You can break it down into management of people or delegation of people or people taking responsibilities, communication, conflict resolution. There's lots of opportunities to tease out some very direct discussions, if you wanted them.
So if anyone's interested, just write it on the chat board, or if you think later, you can get in contact with Danielle and she'll organise something as well. She'll delegate.
This is the first one of these too, so
yeah. So let us know how it's gone. If you'd like to see more webinars, or hopefully we'll be getting back to the face-to-face workshops in the Liebe office soon as well.
Yeah, I think there's great benefits to doing face-to-face meetings. But of course, in these times, this works as well as we can do it.
we think.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know how we've done. So thank you both for coming along and having a chat with us.
Thank you, Jen.
Very informative.
And thanks to the participants.
Yeah.
Thank you. We can't see
everyone. It would have been nice to have you here, go for a cup of tea now, but we'll have to sign off and everyone can go and have their own tea or coffee. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Oh, there you go.